If you had asked me on our 10th wedding anniversary what my biggest worry was, I'd have said termites. That's the thing about living in a 100-year-old house with creaky floors and wooden everything. It's always the little things that eat away at you first. The drip in the faucet. The soft spot in the hallway. The smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes anymore. But I digress. June 14th. Our anniversary. I was standing in the kitchen, ironing my only decent shirt like I was prepping for an awards ceremony instead of a steakhouse dinner. A decade together, and I still couldn't tie a tie without watching a YouTube tutorial first. That night, I was hopeful. Maybe foolish, but hopeful. Emily, my wife, my partner, my North Star back when we both believed in such things, had been distant lately. Sure. More wine at dinner. More solo girl nights. More phones turned screen down. But hey, people change. Life changes. I thought maybe, just maybe, we were finally turning a corner. She had even left a card on the kitchen counter that morning, sealed with a red wax stamp. She was always a sucker for vintage stationery. I didn't open it right away. Wanted to save it for dinner. Fast forward to 7:30 p.m., we're at Lucetta's, candlelight flickering between us like it was trying to whisper a secret. She wore this deep green dress I hadn't seen in years, the one she used to wear back when she still laughed with her whole face. She looked stunning, and I remember thinking, this is it. We're back. Then she pulled out her gift. A slim, rectangular box wrapped in dark paper with a silk ribbon. You first, she said, smiling like she meant it. I opened it. Inside, a leather-bound journal. The kind you'd expect to find in a forgotten attic, full of secrets. I thought maybe you'd want to start writing again, she said softly. You've always said life is stranger than fiction. She had no idea how right she was. I gave her my gift next, tickets to Iceland. Her dream trip. Northern Lights. Glaciers. Those weird little horses with bangs. She looked surprised. Almost panicked. Then she kissed my cheek, thanked me, and sipped her wine like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the ground. We didn't talk about Iceland again. But later that night, after she fell asleep on the couch, watching Netflix, I opened the journal. She had written the first entry. Not to me. Not about me. Just something. Scrawled in her precise handwriting like a confession someone forgot to hide. I think about him more than I should. Sometimes, I forget which version of me he knows. The one who cooks, or the one who lies. I closed the journal. Slowly. Carefully. I didn't know who he was. Yet. But I knew one thing. Termites weren't the problem. The whole house was already hollow. The next morning started like any other. Coffee, silence, and that stiff politeness couples develop when real communication gets replaced by well-timed smiles. Emily sat across from me at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone with surgical focus. Her fingers moved fast, like she was trying to erase a mistake in real time. How's the journal? She asked suddenly, without looking up. I took a sip of black coffee, let the question hang in the air like a missed punch. Empty, I said. Thought I'd wait for inspiration. She nodded once, then went back to scrolling. By noon, she was gone. Brunch with Chloe was the excuse, and I didn't press. I waited 5 minutes after the door closed before heading to her office. I'd never been the jealous type. Never snooped through her drawers. But something about that journal entry had turned a key in my mind I didn't even know was there. Her office was immaculate. Always had been. Organized to the point of suspicion. You couldn't even tell a life was lived there. Just curated. Then I noticed it. A photo frame on the far shelf. Not dusty. Not quite straight. It held a picture I'd seen 1,000 times, Emily and me in Florence, 5 years ago. Our "we still believe in each other" trip. But behind it, a second photo, wedged inside the same frame. I pulled it out slowly. It was her. With someone else. A man. They were laughing in some sunny place, maybe a vineyard or a rooftop bar, judging by the light. His hand was on her waist. Her head tilted back in full, careless joy. The kind you don't fake. The photo had no date, but it had presence. Like it was daring me to guess how long it had been hiding. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. Instead, I did what any sane man would do when the universe throws him a middle finger wrapped in Kodak paper. I sat down. I made a list. Find out who he is. Figure out how long it's been going on. Decide if you're the fool, or just the last one to know. Around 3 p.m., Emily came home, humming like someone who hadn't detonated a grenade in the living room. How was brunch? I asked, slipping the photo back where it came from. Lovely, she said. Chloe's thinking about leaving Jeremy. He's apparently obsessed with his crypto group chat now. Like, full cult mode. I smiled and nodded. Because that's what husbands do, right? Not like you're listening, while your whole world rearranges itself quietly in the background. That night, while she was in the shower, I opened the journal again. She'd written another entry. I told myself it was harmless, that I could keep both lives separate. But now, sometimes, I dream about them in the same room. And I wonder what would happen if they ever spoke. Well, sweetheart, they're about to. You ever have one of those moments where time doesn't just slow down, it folds? That was Tuesday night, 7:48 p.m., to be precise. I was slicing vegetables for dinner, Emily upstairs, probably writing journal entry number 3, when my phone buzzed. Not unusual. But the notification? You've been invited to view a shared album. That's what stopped me. Not a message. Not a call. A shared photo album. The sender? Unknown iCloud. Just the name, eh? Curiosity is a dangerous thing. Especially when you already suspect your life is a Jenga tower waiting for gravity to finish the job. I opened it. At first, it was just thumbnails. Dim-lit selfies. Blurry restaurant shots. A shadow of Emily's dress in a hotel mirror. Then the full pictures loaded. And that's when my stomach decided it had better places to be. There she was. My wife. In places I didn't recognize. With a man I'd never met, but now felt like I'd known my whole life. Beard, strong jaw, smile like a car salesman who knows he's winning. They were close in every shot. Too close for colleagues. Way too close for Chloe's brunch club. Then the captions. That's what did it. Wish you were here already. 3 more sleeps. Don't forget to delete. She didn't. Didn't. And now, here I was, chopping bell peppers like a sitcom husband while the photo evidence of my marriage's collapse loaded frame by frame in 4K. When Emily came downstairs, the world felt quieter. Or maybe I was just listening differently now. Smells amazing, she said, brushing past me. Wine. Already opened, I replied, sliding a glass her way. Rough day. She paused. Only for a second. But it was there, the flicker. Like her brain tripped on a thought and caught itself mid-lie. Yeah, she said. Just a lot of meetings. I nodded. Sure. She took a sip of wine, then sat across from me. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the sound of forks and fake peace between us. She had no idea I'd seen them. Not yet. Not tonight. After she fell asleep on the couch again, I picked up her phone. Not to read anything. Just to look at the screen. She had a new wallpaper. Not us. A lake. Mountains in the back. Very peaceful. Very filtered. Very not our life. I went back upstairs and sat at my desk. Opened my laptop. Created a folder. Titled it Evidence. Inside, I saved every photo. Every message. Every breadcrumb. Because I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. When you catch a thief in your house, you don't scream. You wait. You watch. You figure out what else they've taken. And then you take everything back. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Not out of stress, not out of habit, out of purpose. I had a plan to build. A very specific one. And like any decent construction job, it started with the blueprints. Emily was still asleep, one hand curled under her cheek, breathing soft, and even like she hadn't been sending love notes to someone else's beard all week. I stared at her for a long minute. Not out of anger. Not even pain. Just calculation. This was the same woman who once cried when I surprised her with a bookshelf I built by hand. Who used to doodle hearts around my name on sticky notes. Who used to kiss my temple when she thought I was asleep. That woman was somewhere in there, sure, but buried beneath someone else. And I had no intention of digging her out. Not anymore. Instead, I slid out of bed quietly, made coffee like always, and sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. The kind people use when they need things to look official. I wrote 3 words at the top. She doesn't. No, that was my advantage. She didn't know I knew. She didn't know I was done pretending. And most importantly, she didn't know I was about to redesign the whole ending of our little story. Step 1, information. I needed to know who this man was, not just what he looked like in soft lighting or how he captioned hotel room selfies. I wanted his name, his job, his mortgage interest rate if I could get it. If he was going to be the wedge that split my life in two, the least he could do was introduce himself properly. I started with the metadata on the photos from the shared album. Basic stuff, timestamps, locations. One in particular stood out, a high-end rooftop bar downtown. I looked it up, the Citron Lounge. Private booths. No reservations under $25 a cocktail. The kind of place you go when you want to drink in the dark and pretend you're in a music video. So I called in sick. I didn't sound convincing. I didn't need to. By noon, I was at Citron, dressed in a button-up and the kind of smile that says I'm a man on a mission, but I'm pretending I'm just here for a good time. I found the bartender easily. Tall guy, neck tattoo, the kind of confidence that comes from having seen it all without being impressed by any of it. I took a seat and ordered a whiskey I didn't plan to finish. "Hey," I said after a minute, pulling out my phone and flashing one of the photos from the album. Random question. "Do you recognize this guy?" "My wife's friend. Think they came here a few times last month." The bartender didn't even blink. "Yeah, that guy's a regular. Big tipper. Usually in a blazer, always with a different woman." He glanced at the photo again. "She's been with him more than once, though." I nodded slowly, like I wasn't cataloging every word. "Name?" I asked casually. He leaned back, wiping a glass like it was a stage prop. "I think it's Adrian. Adrian Chase. Works in finance or tech or something. Drives a Tesla with out-of-state plates." Bingo. I left a tip big enough to make sure he'd remember me, then walked out into the cold, my mind already racing. Adrian Chase. That was a name with LinkedIn energy. Within 5 minutes, I had him. VP of something flashy. Portfolio manager at a boutique firm downtown. Instagram full of skyline photos, scotch bottles, and quotes about grinding harder than everyone else. The kind of guy who calls podcasts mental fuel and thinks reading one book a year makes him a philosopher. Perfect. Step 2. Leverage. See, revenge isn't about chaos. It's not some blind rage punch in the face outside a restaurant. No, revenge, real revenge, is art. And art needs control, vision, timing. So I wasn't going to confront Emily. Not yet. Instead, I started collecting. Not just screenshots. Not just photos. But receipts. Hotel bookings. Messages. A pattern. I used an old iPad we barely touched and synced it with her cloud. Turns out she had no idea how automatic backups worked. Rookie mistake. By that evening, I had over 100 photos, 2 audio messages, and a half-written note she never sent that ended with, "We just need a little more time." He suspects nothing. Wrong again, sweetheart. Dinner that night was chicken piccata. Emily had her hair tied back, humming some pop song under her breath like a Disney character in denial. "You seem quiet lately," she said as she passed me the bread. I smiled. "Just work stuff. You know." She nodded, but her eyes lingered a second too long. Like she sensed something, but couldn't quite place it. "I was thinking," she added, twirling pasta on her fork, "maybe we should plan a trip. You and me." "A trip?" I said, pretending to consider it. "Yeah, get away for a weekend. Just us." I nodded. "Sounds perfect." Because what she didn't know was that I'd already booked one. A cabin up north. Isolated. Peaceful. And already paid for in her name. But we'll get to that later. For now, I played the part. The loyal husband. The clueless fool. The man who still believed. But inside, I was building something beautiful. The thing about a good trap is that it never looks like one. Not until the teeth have already clamped shut. That's why I chose the cabin. Quiet. Secluded. Romantic. Even. The kind of place that looked like it belonged in a couple's therapy brochure. Emily loved the woods. Used to talk about how the silence reset her soul. I always thought she said that to justify unplugging and drinking 2 bottles of wine without judgment. Either way, it worked in my favor. I booked the place under her name and used a burner card for the deposit. Everything else? Paid in cash. The owner barely glanced at me when I picked up the key, just handed me a manila envelope and mumbled something about bears. It was a 4-hour drive from the city, nestled in a patch of pine forest that looked like it hadn't heard a car engine since the 80s. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, just a fireplace, a king bed, and a guest log full of couples pretending to be happy. Perfect. I returned home 2 days before we were set to get away, whistling as I stepped into the kitchen. Emily was at the table, flipping through a travel magazine like she was trying to find something to care about. "Good news," I said, tossing my keys into the bowl by the door. "I booked that weekend trip." She looked up, surprised. "You did?" I nodded. Rustic cabin. Middle of nowhere. No neighbors, no signal, no stress. Her eyes flickered, excitement, then doubt. "That sounds amazing." "Thought it might." I smiled. She stood and wrapped her arms around my neck, the same way she did when we were younger, before Us became a background app on her phone. "Thank you," she whispered. I kissed her cheek and counted the seconds until she pulled away. 7. Always 7. That night, I pretended to sleep while she messaged him. I'd installed a keylogger on her tablet 2 weeks prior. Not because I needed more proof. I had enough to make a judge cry. I just wanted her words. Her tone. I read every message like a playwright studying character motivation. She told him I was distant, cold, that she felt trapped in a routine. Routine. That was the word she used to describe the man who'd held her mother's hand in the ICU, who'd patched the roof during a thunderstorm, who'd gone to 3 grocery stores in one night just to find the brand of almond milk she liked. Routine. I didn't get mad. I got focused. The day of the trip, I packed light, just enough to make it look sincere. Firewood. A bottle of wine. Her favorite sweater, the one she forgot she still owned. She dressed like someone going to be photographed. Fitted jeans, a black coat, perfect makeup. I told her she looked beautiful. I meant it. The drive up was quiet but comfortable. No music. Just winding roads and the occasional squirrel crossing like it had a death wish. You okay? She asked at one point, her hand brushing my arm. Better than I've been in a while, I said. And I wasn't lying. We arrived just before sunset. The cabin looked exactly how I remembered. Worn wood siding, stone chimney, and a wraparound porch with a single rocking chair that creaked like it knew things. Emily stepped inside first. It's cozy. It's ours for the weekend, I replied, setting the bags down. No distractions. I lit the fireplace while she explored, glass of wine already in hand. She walked slowly, thoughtfully, like someone rehearsing a decision. That night, we cooked together. Pasta, garlic bread, red wine. She laughed. Once. It sounded brittle, like a sound she hadn't used in years. After dinner, we sat in front of the fire, legs tangled, the silence between us warm but loaded. I miss this, she said softly, resting her head on my shoulder. Me too. She tilted her face toward mine, her eyes shining in the flickering light. For a second, I wondered if this was the part where people changed their minds. Then I remembered the message from 3 nights ago. He's bringing me to some remote cabin. I'm already planning how I'll sneak away for a phone call. I hate lying to his face, but I hate lying next to him more. Nope. She was still hers. And I was still routine. The next morning, I made coffee while she slept. Sat on the porch and wrote in the journal she gave me. First entry. Titled it, Exit Strategy. By the time she woke up, I had breakfast ready. Eggs, toast, berries. She ate quietly, glancing at her phone out of habit, forgetting there was no signal here. Mid-morning, I suggested a hike. We followed the trail behind the cabin, sunlight breaking through the trees in soft, golden lines. Emily looked peaceful, like a woman vacationing from the weight of her own guilt. Halfway through, she turned to me and said, "We should do this more." I nodded. "We will." Because here's the thing, this trip wasn't a getaway. It was a handoff. Back at the cabin, I excused myself to check the water tank out back. In reality, I walked to the edge of the clearing and made a call from the satellite phone I'd borrowed from a buddy who worked search and rescue. It rang twice. "Hello, Chase," I said. Silence. "Who is this?" "You've been sleeping with my wife." More silence. Then a scoff. "I don't know what you think." "Save it. I'm not here to beg or threaten. I'm here to invite." "Invite?" "She's at a cabin. No signal. Nothing around for miles. She thinks she's here for a romantic trip." A pause. "Why would you tell me this?" "Because I want you to come pick her up." "You serious?" As a hammer to the temple. He didn't respond right away. Then, "Where?" I gave him the location. "You'll need to hike the last mile. I'll leave the map in the mailbox." "What's the catch?" "No catch. She chose you. Let her have you." He exhaled slowly. "This some twisted trap?" "Only if you believe in karma." I hung up. Back at the cabin, Emily was by the fire, reading. She looked up as I stepped in. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," I said. Because it was. There's a peculiar stillness that sets in when you know something's about to end. It's not dread. Not fear. Just the calm that comes when all the pieces are finally in place. Emily was lying on the couch, one leg draped over a throw blanket, flipping through that book she always pretended to read on planes. She didn't know she was waiting, but her whole body said otherwise. Waiting for a text that wouldn't come. A buzz that wouldn't buzz. She was restless in that quiet, shifting shoulders kind of way. "Should we go for another walk?" she asked without looking up. I shook my head. "Nah, I'm good right here." She nodded and went back to pretending. Chase would be arriving in about an hour. The plan was simple. He'd park at the edge of the service road, hike the mile through the trees, like I did yesterday when I scouted the trail, and find the path to the cabin. I'd left a laminated map under the mailbox lid this morning, complete with a little red X marking the cabin's back entrance. No confrontation, no ambush, no raised voices, just a handoff. I'd even left a note inside the map pouch. She's yours now. No refunds. Cruel? Maybe. But cruelty loses its edge when you're handing it to someone who came looking for it. Chase knew exactly what he was walking into. He was either a romantic or a fool. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. At 4:15, I stepped out onto the porch with a mug of cold coffee, watching the breeze ripple through the trees like nature knew what was about to happen and wanted to bow out early. Back inside, Emily was texting again. She hadn't said it, but I could tell. That blank stare at the screen, the fake stretch of her fingers like she wasn't checking every 5 seconds, classic. Still nothing. I asked, casually. She blinked. Huh. Your phone. You've been checking it like it owes you money. She laughed, but it was thin. Just waiting on Chloe. She was going to send me that link for the pottery class I told you about. Right. Pottery. I smiled, slow. You've always been so artistic. She didn't catch it. She rarely did when her guilt was louder than my sarcasm. I stood and walked toward the kitchen. Think I'll take a shower. Okay, she said. Don't use all the hot water. I paused in the hallway and looked back. You ever think about what comes next? I asked. She looked up. Next? After this. The cabin. Us. Her face went still. A flicker of something passed through her eyes. Panic? Or just premature nostalgia? Of course, she said softly. I think about it all the time. Good, I said. Then you'll be ready. I left the water running in the bathroom just long enough for her to hear it. Then I slipped out the back door with my backpack and cut around the side of the cabin, out of view. Down the trail, just a few 100 feet into the woods, I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then I saw him. Chase. He was taller than I expected. Dressed like a man who was trying to look casual but had definitely rehearsed this. Hiking boots that still had the store tag creases. A button-up rolled at the sleeves. A duffel slung over one shoulder. I stepped out into the path before he reached the porch. He froze. We stood there for a moment, just long enough for the roles to settle. Husband. Homewrecker. Logan, he asked, cautious. I nodded once. Chase. He shifted, not quite meeting my eyes. You really want to do it like this? I'm not doing anything, I said. You are. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something meaningful. Probably had a whole monologue ready. But I cut him off. She's inside. Still thinks I'm showering. You should go say hi. Chase hesitated. You're not staying? Nope. You've already been in my bed, my wife, and my life. I figured I'd let you have the house keys too. He didn't laugh. Good. I wasn't joking. Look, he said, scratching the back of his neck. I never meant for it to happen like this. It just. Spare me. I lifted my backpack. If I wanted closure, I'd write a poem. He took a step toward me. She's not a bad person. I stopped walking. Then you deserve each other. And with that, I kept going down the path, through the trees, past the edge of what used to be my life. Behind me, I heard the crunch of his boots as he walked toward the cabin. I didn't turn around. I reached my truck half an hour later, tossed the bag in the back, climbed in, and started the engine. The forest swallowed the sound like it had been waiting all day to mute me. But I wasn't done. Not yet. See, there was one final piece to this little handoff. One last truth I'd left in the cabin, tucked in the drawer next to the matches. A letter. Sealed. Unmistakable. With her name on the front in black ink. In it, I detailed everything: dates, photos, messages, even the alias Chase used when booking hotels. I included a thumb drive. Every file. Every photo. Every sweet little betrayal. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because when the fire starts, she'll know exactly who handed her the matchbook. I drove straight to a motel 3 towns over. Not because I couldn't afford better, but because I didn't need better. One night. That's all I needed. A mattress, a lock, and some silence. Around 9 p.m., I got the message. Not from her. From the security camera I'd discreetly hidden in the cabin's bookshelf, disguised as a decorative clock. Motion triggered. Sync to the cloud. I opened the footage. Watched as she greeted Chase at the door, eyes wide, stunned, then soft. A hug. Too long. Too familiar. She didn't ask where I was. She didn't even look confused. I watched her read the letter next. Her smile faded in stages. She sat on the edge of the couch, reading, lips moving silently. Chase said something. She didn't answer. And then, the crying started. She folded over like someone had taken the air out of her. Chase reached for her hesitant, but she shoved his hand away. Then got up, pacing, ranting. No sound on the footage, but I could see it all written on her face. Realization is a funny thing. It doesn't arrive. It detonates. And for once, I wasn't the one broken on the floor. 3 days passed. No calls. No messages. No emails. Not even from her lawyer. I'd already filed first, hours before we left for the cabin. Grounds, infidelity. Supporting documents included. I attached the thumb drive and sent it certified mail. Control, start to finish. On the 4th day, she showed up at my office. Unannounced. Dressed down. Hair tied back. No makeup. Eyes swollen and tired. She looked human. Finally. I didn't stand. Didn't offer a chair. Just stared as she stood in the doorway like a ghost in a house that no longer belonged to her. Why? She asked. I set my pen down. You mean why did I leave you with him? Or why did I make sure you knew I knew everything? She didn't answer. So I did. Because I wanted you to feel what I felt, I said. Powerless. Outplayed. Blindsided. You could have just left. I smiled. But then you wouldn't have remembered me. You'd have told people I got cold. Distant. That I checked out. Now you'll tell them the truth, if you tell them anything at all. She wiped her eyes, but I could tell she wasn't ready to cry yet. Chase left, she said. I raised my eyebrows. You don't say. He said I was too complicated. I leaned forward. You are. Then leaned back. And now, you're someone else's regret. She didn't reply. Just stood there for a second too long, like she wanted to say sorry but had finally realized that word didn't live here anymore. Then she left. 6 months later, the divorce was final. She didn't contest a single term. I kept the house, the car, most of the savings. She got her freedom. In silence. Everyone around us eventually learned some version of the story. But I never said a bad word about her, not publicly. I let the facts do the damage. Let her explain why a man like me walked away without looking back. It was better that way. A few mutual friends reached out. One even said, you were right to walk. I didn't correct them. Truth is, I didn't walk. I set fire to the paper house we built, and I watched her try to pull the ashes back into shape. You don't fix something that was hollow to begin with. A year to the day after the cabin, I took a trip, solo. Not to Iceland, not to any dramatic destination. Just a quiet place by the water, somewhere with wind and no history. I brought the journal she gave me, sat on a bench, wrote the final entry. This isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. You don't get stronger by screaming louder. You get stronger by being quiet long enough to hear yourself again. I thought you were the best thing that ever happened to me. Turns out, you were the best thing that ever ended. I closed the journal, tossed it into the fire pit beside me, watched it curl, blacken, disappear. Then I stood, turned, and walked toward the next chapter. No need to look back, because I already knew how that story ended.